The November evening air was crisp and clear as Guardsman Michael Patterson took his position outside Buckingham Palace for the night shift. At 23 years old and with 4 years of service in the Coldstream Guards, Michael had performed ceremonial duties hundreds of times, but he never lost the sense of pride that came with protecting the royal residence. His red tunic was immaculate, his bare skin perfectly positioned, and his rifle held with the precision that years of training had made second nature. November 5th was always a challenging night for the palace guards. Guy Fawkes Night brought with it the sounds of fireworks, bonfires, and celebrations throughout London, creating a constant backdrop of explosive noises that tested the nerves of even the most experienced security personnel. The public celebrations were legal and expected, but they provided perfect cover for anyone with malicious intentions who might want to mask their activities among the legitimate festivities. Michael's sector covered the main entrance gates where tourists and well-wishers gathered throughout the day. During evening hours, the area typically became quieter, but Guy Fawkes Night was different. Groups of revelers moved through the streets, many carrying sparklers and small fireworks, their laughter and excitement echoing off the palace walls, standing perfectly still in his sentry box. His training had taught him to maintain the appearance of a ceremonial statue, while remaining completely alert to potential threats. The balance between public accessibility and security was delicate, requiring guards to distinguish between harmless tourist curiosity and genuine danger. At approximately 8:15 p.m., Michael noticed a group of teenagers approaching the palace gates. There were 5 of them, aged perhaps 16 or 17, carrying backpacks and speaking in excited whispers. Their behavior immediately caught his attention because they seemed more focused on the palace structure itself rather than the typical tourist interest in taking photos or observing the guards. The group's leader appeared to be a tall, lanky boy with bleached hair, who kept looking around nervously while his companions giggled and pointed at various parts of the palace facade. Michael's peripheral vision allowed him to track their movements while maintaining his rigid posture and forward gaze. One of the teenagers, a girl with bright pink hair, pulled something from her backpack and showed it to the others.
Even from
his position, Michael could see it was a large firework, much bigger than the small sparklers and firecrackers typically used in Guy Fawkes celebrations. The device appeared to be a professional-grade firework, the type used in organized displays. Rather than personal celebrations, Michael's training kicked in as he assessed the potential threat. While fireworks were common on November 5th, bringing large explosive devices near any government building or royal residence was strictly prohibited and potentially dangerous. The teenagers' furtive behavior and their obvious focus on the palace suggested this was not innocent celebration. The group moved closer to the palace gates, positioning themselves near the ornate iron railings that separated the public area from the palace grounds. The boy with bleached hair began unwrapping the large firework while his companions formed a loose circle around him, apparently acting as lookouts. Michael faced a critical decision that every royal guard trains for but hopes never to encounter. He could maintain his ceremonial position and trust that other security measures would handle the situation, or he could break protocol and take immediate action to prevent what appeared to be a developing security incident. The firework the teenagers were handling was significantly larger than anything that should be in civilian hands. Its professional appearance and size suggested it could cause serious damage to property or injury to people if detonated near the palace gates. The teenagers' behavior indicated they were planning something more than a simple celebration. As Michael watched, the boy began preparing what appeared to be a launching setup, positioning the fireworks so that it would fire directly toward the palace facade if ignited. His companions continued to act as lookouts, their nervous energy and constant glancing around confirming that they understood they were engaged in prohibited activity. Michael's mind raced through his training protocols. Royal guards were instructed to maintain their ceremonial role whenever possible, but they were also sworn protectors of the royal family and the palace. When faced with a clear threat, their duty was to act decisively to prevent harm to the royal residence or its occupants. The decision became urgent when Michael saw the boy produce a lighter and began approaching the fireworks fuse. The device was now pointed directly at the palace's main facade. It was positioned to launch its explosive payload at one of Britain's most important historical and political buildings. In that moment, Michael understood that his ceremonial duties and his protective responsibilities had converged into a single, critical choice. The teenagers were seconds away from launching what could be a dangerous projectile at Buckingham Palace. During a time when the royal family was in residence, the sounds of distant fireworks and celebrations continued throughout London, providing the perfect auditory cover for what the teenagers were planning. But Michael had seen enough to know that what was about to happen was no innocent prank or celebration. It was a direct threat to the palace and everyone inside it. As the boy's lighter moved toward the fireworks fuse, Michael prepared to break the most fundamental rule of ceremonial guard duty. For the first time in his 4 years of service, he was about to abandon his position and take direct action to protect the crown. The moment the teenager's lighter flame touched the fireworks fuse, Michael knew he had seconds to act. Years of military training took over as he abandoned his ceremonial position and sprinted toward the group with a speed and determination that caught everyone by surprise. "Stop, armed police!" Michael shouted at the top of his lungs, using the standard warning that would alert both the teenagers and any nearby security personnel to the developing situation. His voice carried the full authority of someone trained in crisis response. Cutting through the ambient noise of distant celebrations, the teenagers froze in shock as the imposing figure of the royal guard charged toward them. The boy with the lighter dropped it immediately. The small flame extinguished as it clattered to the pavement. But the fuse had already been lit, and Michael could see the telltale sparks traveling toward the fireworks' main charge. With less than 10 seconds before detonation, Michael reached the group and immediately focused on the most critical task, redirecting the firework away from the palace. The device had been positioned to fire horizontally at the building's facade, but Michael grabbed it and tilted it skyward, using his body weight to anchor the launching tube while pointing it toward the open sky above the crowd. "Get back, everyone. Get back," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority that had been drilled into him during years of crowd control training. The teenagers scattered immediately, their prank having escalated far beyond anything they had anticipated. The firework exploded with tremendous force, sending a shower of colored sparks and explosive charges high into the November night sky. The detonation was loud enough to be heard several blocks away, creating a brief but spectacular light show that illuminated the palace, its facade, and surrounding area. Within seconds of the explosion, the palace's sophisticated security system triggered multiple responses. Armed police officers emerged from concealed positions. Palace security personnel activated emergency protocols, and communication systems crackled with urgent reports of an explosive incident at the main gates. Michael remained in position, the spent firework launcher, while scanning the area for additional threats. His training had taught him that single incidents often masked larger coordinated attacks, so he maintained his defensive posture until backup arrived. Inspector Sarah Williams of the Metropolitan Police's Specialist Protection Command was among the first responders to reach Michael's position. She had been monitoring palace security from a nearby command post when reports of the explosion came through the radio system. "Guardsmen, report," Inspector Williams commanded as she approached. With her weapon drawn and her radio crackling with updates from other security units. "5 teenagers with a large firework, ma'am," Michael reported crisply, maintaining his military bearing despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. Device was positioned to fire at the palace facade. I redirected it skyward before detonation. Inspector Williams quickly assessed the scene, noting the scattered remains of the firework, the abandoned lighter, and the clear evidence of where the teenagers had set up their launching position. Her experienced eye immediately recognized that this had been a deliberate attempt to strike the palace building rather than a random celebration gone wrong. "Where are the subjects now?" she asked, while signaling for additional officers to secure the perimeter. "Scattered when I intervened, ma'am. 5 juveniles, approximately 16 to 17 years old. The leader was tall, thin, bleached hair, one female with bright pink hair, all carrying backpacks. Michael's detailed description, delivered with military precision despite the chaotic circumstances, demonstrated the training that had prepared him for exactly this type of emergency. Even while taking immediate action to prevent the attack, he had continued to gather intelligence that would help security forces respond effectively. The palace grounds had been secured within minutes of the incident, with armed officers taking positions around the perimeter while plainclothes security personnel began questioning witnesses and searching for the fleeing teenagers. The efficiency of the response reflected years of preparation for various threat scenarios. Captain James Morrison, Michael's commanding officer, arrived shortly after the initial security response. As the senior military representative on duty, that evening he needed to assess both the immediate threat and the appropriateness of Michael's response to the emergency. Guardsman Patterson, Captain Morrison said as he approached Michael's position, "Walk me through exactly what happened." Michael provided a detailed chronological account of his observations. From the teenagers' initial suspicious behavior through their preparation of the firework and his decision to intervene, his report was clear, factual, and demonstrated the kind of situational awareness that justified his dramatic departure from ceremonial protocol. "Sir, the device was positioned to strike the palace facade," Michael concluded. "I assessed immediate intervention was necessary to prevent damage to the building and potential injury to any occupants." Captain Morrison nodded approvingly. While breaking ceremonial position was unprecedented, Michael's actions had clearly prevented what could have been a significant security incident. The firework had been large enough to cause real damage if it had struck the building, and the teenagers' deliberate positioning suggested malicious intent rather than accidental misdirection. The investigation that followed would reveal more about the teenagers' motivations and planning. But the immediate crisis had been resolved through Michael's quick thinking and decisive action. What had begun as a routine ceremonial duty had become a test of his ability to balance protocol with protective HSF responsibility. As security teams continued their work around the palace grounds, Michael remained at his post, providing information to investigators while processing the reality that his split-second decision had prevented what could have been a serious attack on one of Britain's most important national symbols. Within 2 hours of the incident, the Metropolitan Police had tracked down and arrested 4 of the 5 teenagers involved in the firework attack. Their social media accounts revealed a disturbing pattern of escalating pranks and anti-establishment sentiment that had culminated in their decision to target Buckingham Palace on Guy Fawkes Night. Detective Chief Inspector Robert Hayes led the investigation, working closely with palace security and anti-terrorism units to determine whether the incident represented a broader threat or an isolated act of juvenile delinquency. The teenagers' digital footprints painted a concerning picture of radicalization through online forums and social media groups that promoted increasingly dangerous acts of rebellion. The device they used was a Category F3 firework, DCI Hayes explained to the security briefing assembled in the Palace Command Center. "These are professional-grade pyrotechnics that require special licenses for civilian use. The fact that these teenagers obtained and planned to use one suggests either serious criminal connections or advanced planning." Michael found himself at the center of the investigation, providing detailed statements about the teenagers' behavior and the sequence of events that led to his intervention. His military training in observation and reporting proved invaluable as investigators worked to understand the full scope of the planned attack. The 5th teenager, identified as Marcus Webb, remained at large for several days, becoming the subject of a citywide manhunt. Security footage from nearby businesses and traffic cameras helped investigators track the group's movements throughout the evening, revealing that they had conducted surveillance of the palace area for several hours before attempting their attack. Meanwhile, the story began to attract media attention as news of the incident leaked through unofficial channels. Initial reports described an explosive incident at Buckingham Palace, leading to widespread speculation about terrorism and threats to the royal family. The palace's press office worked to control the narrative while protecting the integrity of the ongoing investigation. Michael's actions had prevented not only physical damage to the palace, but also the psychological impact that a successful attack might have had on public confidence. The image of Buckingham Palace under attack, even by something as seemingly minor as a firework, could have had significant implications for national morale, or in the perceived security of Britain's most important institutions. The arrested teenagers revealed during questioning that their plan had been motivated by a mixture of anti-monarchist sentiment and a desire for social media notoriety. They had planned to film the fireworks striking the palace and share the footage online as a symbol of rebellion against traditional British institutions. They saw it as a harmless prank that would make them famous, explained Dr. Amanda Richards. The forensic psychologist brought in to assess the teenagers' mental state and motivations, but they failed to understand the serious legal and security implications of their actions. The investigation revealed that the teenagers had obtained the professional firework through connections with an older cousin who worked in the pyrotechnics industry. This individual was also arrested and faced charges related to supplying restricted explosive materials to minors. 3 days after the initial incident, Marcus Webb was arrested at his family's home in South London. Unlike his accomplices, who had expressed remorse once they understood the severity of their actions, Marcus remained defiant, claiming that the monarchy deserved to be challenged by any means necessary. The arrest of the final suspect allowed investigators to complete their assessment of the incident and its implications. What had initially appeared to be a juvenile prank revealed itself as a more serious security breach that highlighted vulnerabilities in palace protection during high-risk periods like Guy Fawkes Night. Captain Morrison called Michael into his office for a formal debriefing once the investigation concluded. The conversation would determine not only Michael's immediate future, but also set precedents for how royal guards should respond to similar threats in the future. Guardsman Patterson, Captain Morrison, began reviewing the thick file of reports and statements that had accumulated during the investigation. Your actions on November 5th represent a significant deviation from standard ceremonial protocol. Michael stood at attention. It's uncertain whether he was about to be commended or disciplined for his decision to abandon his post and intervene directly in the security incident. However, Captain Morrison continued, the investigation has confirmed that your intervention prevented what could have been a serious attack on the palace. The firework was positioned to cause maximum damage and embarrassment, and your quick thinking neutralized the threat before it could be realized. The captain's assessment reflected the complex balance between maintaining ceremonial traditions and adapting to modern security threats. Royal guards had historically been expected to remain at their posts regardless of external events. But the changing nature of security challenges required more flexible approaches. The investigation also revealed intelligence gaps that had allowed the teenagers to conduct surveillance and plan their attack without detection. This led to enhanced monitoring of social media for threats against royal properties and improved coordination between ceremonial guards and plainclothes security personnel. Michael's actions had not only prevented an immediate attack, but had also highlighted the need for updated protocols that empowered guards to take proactive measures. When faced with clear and present dangers to the royal family and their residences, 2 weeks after the firework incident, Michael was summoned to an extraordinary meeting at Wellington Barracks, the headquarters of the Guards Division. The meeting included senior officers from multiple regiments, representatives from the Metropolitan Police, and officials from the Palace Security Department. The purpose was to conduct a comprehensive review of the incident and its implications for royal protection protocols. Major General Sir Henry Whitmore, the commanding officer of the Household Division, opened the meeting with a thorough analysis of what had occurred on Guy Fawkes Night. His assessment would influence not only Michael's career but also the future training and protocols for all ceremonial guards protecting royal properties. Asterisk. Guardsman Patterson's actions present us with both a success story and a challenge, Major General Whitmore began, addressing the assembled officials. He successfully prevented an attack on Buckingham Palace, but he did so by abandoning fundamental principles of ceremonial guard duty that had been maintained for centuries. The tension in the room was palpable as Michael stood at attention. Listening to senior officers debate the precedent his actions might set. If guards were encouraged to leave their posts whenever they perceived threats, it could fundamentally alter the nature of ceremonial duties and the public's relationship with royal traditions. Commander Patricia Stevens, from the Metropolitan Police, presented the criminal investigation's findings, which painted a more serious picture than initially understood. The teenagers had been in contact with online groups that promoted increasingly aggressive acts against government and royal targets. Their firework attack had been intended as a recruiting tool for more serious future actions. Used could have caused significant structural damage to the palace facade, Commander Stevens explained. More importantly, psychological impact of a successful attack during a high-profile event like Guy Fawkes Night could have encouraged copycat incidents or escalation by more serious threat actors. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the palace's chief security advisor, presented an analysis of how the incident had exposed gaps in the coordination between ceremonial guards and the broader security apparatus. While the palace had extensive surveillance and response capabilities, the traditional separation between ceremonial roles and active security functions had created blind spots that the teenagers had exploited. Guardsman Patterson was in the unique position of having direct visual contact with the threat as it developed, Dr. Mitchell noted. Our surveillance systems and plainclothes officers were focused on other areas, making his intervention crucial to preventing the attack. The meeting revealed that Michael's actions had prompted a comprehensive review of royal security protocols across all properties. Similar incidents at other locations might not have been prevented without the kind of immediate intervention that Michael had provided. Captain Morrison presented Michael's service record and character assessment, highlighting his exemplary conduct throughout his 4 years in the Coldstream Guards. His training scores, leadership evaluations, and previous performance during ceremonial duties all supported the conclusion that his decision to intervene had been based on sound judgment rather than impulsiveness or protocol violations. Guardsman Patterson has consistently demonstrated the values we expect from the Guards Division, Captain Morrison stated. His actions on November 5th reflected those values in an unprecedented situation that required immediate decision-making. The discussion that followed explored the broader implications of empowering ceremonial guards to take active security measures. Traditional royal guard duties had emphasized the importance of maintaining position and appearance, regardless of external events. But modern security threats required more adaptive responses. Lieutenant Colonel James Hartford from the Welsh Guards raised concerns about maintaining the ceremonial integrity that was central to the Guards' public role. If guards are seen as active security personnel, rather than ceremonial figures, it could alter the public's relationship with royal traditions and the accessibility of royal properties. However, Inspector Williams from Specialist Protection Command argued that the distinction between ceremonial and security functions had become artificial in an era of evolving threats. The guards are highly trained soldiers with security responsibilities. Asking them to ignore clear threats to protect ceremonial appearances puts both the royal family and the public at risk. The debate reflected broader tensions within British society about balancing tradition with modern security needs. The Royal Guards represented centuries of military tradition, but they also served as the front line of defense for the nation's most important symbolic institutions. Major General Whitmore called for a break in the proceedings to allow senior officers to consult privately about the recommendations they would make regarding Michael's actions and future protocol changes. The outcome of their deliberations would influence royal security procedures for years to come. During the break, Michael was approached by Inspector Williams, who had been impressed by his performance during and after the incident. Their conversation with him revealed the personal impact that the event had had on his understanding of his role and responsibilities. "How has this experience changed your perspective on guard duty?" Inspector Williams asked. Michael considered his response carefully. "Ma'am, I've always understood that we serve to protect the royal family, but I had never faced a situation where ceremonial protocol and protective duties conflicted so directly. I hope I made the right choice, but I also understand the concerns about maintaining our traditional role." His thoughtful response demonstrated the maturity and professionalism that had characterized his handling of the entire situation. From the initial intervention through the complex investigation and review process that followed, When the meeting reconvened after the hour-long break, Major General Whitmore announced a decision that would reshape royal security protocols and establish Michael's actions as a model for future Guard responses to security threats. After extensive consultation with Palace Security, the Metropolitan Police, and senior regimental commanders, we have concluded that Guardsman Patterson's intervention was not only appropriate but exemplary, Major General Whitmore declared. His actions will serve as the foundation for new protocols that better integrate ceremonial guards into the overall security framework protecting royal properties. The decision meant that Michael would not face disciplinary action for abandoning his ceremonial post. Instead, his quick thinking and decisive response would become part of the training curriculum for all royal guards, ensuring that future personnel would be prepared to make similar judgments when faced with immediate threats. Commander Stevens presented the final criminal charges that would be brought against the 5 teenagers. The leader, Marcus Webb, faced the most serious charges, including conspiracy to damage a protected building and possession of explosive materials with intent to cause harm. The others faced lesser charges, but would all receive criminal records that would affect their future opportunities. The investigation has revealed that this group was part of a larger online network, promoting attacks against government and royal targets. Commander Stevens explained. Their prosecution will send a clear message that such activities will be met with the full force of the law. Dr. Mitchell outlined the security improvements that had been implemented following the incident. These included enhanced surveillance of social media for threats against royal properties, improved coordination between ceremonial guards and plainclothes security personnel, and new protocols for responding to suspicious behavior during high-risk events. The most significant change was the establishment of direct communication links between ceremonial guards and the Palace Security Command Center. Guards would now carry discrete communication devices that would allow them to report threats and receive guidance without abandoning their ceremonial roles, except in extreme circumstances. Guardsman Patterson's intervention highlighted the value of having trained military personnel in visible positions. Dr. Mitchell noted. The new protocols will ensure that guards can serve both their ceremonial and protective functions more effectively. 3 days after the meeting, Michael received notification that he was being recommended for the Queen's Commendation for Bravery, one of the highest honors available to members of the armed forces for actions not involving enemy combat. Recommendations cited his exceptional courage and quick thinking in preventing an attack on Buckingham Palace. The commendation process required detailed documentation of the incident and its aftermath, including statements from witnesses, security personnel, and investigating officers. Michael's actions were scrutinized not only for their immediate effectiveness, but also for their adherence to military values and their contribution to royal security. Captain Morrison informed Michael of the commendation during a private meeting in his office. This recognition reflects not only your actions on November 5th, but also the professional standards you've maintained throughout your service, he explained. You've demonstrated that ceremonial guards can adapt to modern threats while maintaining the dignity and tradition of their roles. The story of Michael's intervention began to circulate within military circles, becoming a case study in decision-making, under pressure, and the evolution of traditional roles to meet contemporary challenges. Military academies and training facilities incorporated the incident into their curricula as an example of leadership and adaptability. Meanwhile, the 5 teenagers faced the full consequences of their actions in court. Marcus Webb received a 2-year custodial sentence, while his accomplices received community service and probation. All were banned from approaching any royal property and were required to undergo counseling about the serious nature of their actions. The court proceedings revealed the extent to which online radicalization had influenced their decision to target Buckingham Palace. Social media analysis showed that they had been encouraged by extremist groups to escalate from minor acts of vandalism to more serious attacks against symbolic targets. Judge Sarah Hamilton, who presided over their sentencing, used the case to highlight the dangers of online radicalization and the serious consequences that could result from what young people might perceive as harmless pranks. Your actions could have caused serious damage to one of our nation's most important buildings, and could have injured innocent people, Judge Hamilton told the defendants. The fact that your attack was prevented by the quick thinking of a royal guard does not diminish the seriousness of your intentions or the potential consequences of your actions. Michael attended the court proceedings as a witness, providing testimony about the teenagers' behavior and the immediate threat they had posed. His professional demeanor and clear recounting of events impressed court officials and reinforced the justification for his dramatic intervention. The media coverage of the court case brought public attention to Michael's actions for the first time. While palace officials had initially kept details of the incident confidential to protect the investigation, the court proceedings made the basic facts public, leading to widespread praise for Michael's quick thinking and dedication to duty. Letters of support arrived at the barracks from members of the public who had learned about Michael's actions through news coverage of the court case. Many praised him for putting public safety ahead of ceremonial protocol and for demonstrating the continued relevance of military traditions in modern society. The recognition Michael received extended beyond formal military honors to include appreciation from the broader public who understood that his actions had protected an important national symbol and prevented what could have been a significant security incident with lasting psychological impact. 6 months after the Guy Fawkes Night incident, Michael found himself standing in the same courtyard at Buckingham Palace, where he had confronted the teenagers. But this time the circumstances were entirely different. He was dressed in his finest ceremonial uniform, waiting to receive the Queen's commendation for bravery in a private ceremony attended by senior military officers and palace officials. The transformation in Michael's life since that November evening had been remarkable. His actions had not only prevented an attack on the palace, but it also catalyzed significant improvements in royal security protocols and established him as a role model for adaptive leadership within traditional military structures. Queen Elizabeth, to herself, presented the commendation, speaking privately with Michael about his service and the courage he had demonstrated. The conversation, though brief, reflected the monarch's personal appreciation for the dedication of the guards who protected her residences and family. Your quick thinking and decisive action upheld the finest traditions of military service, the Queen told Michael as she pinned the commendation to his uniform. You demonstrated that honor and duty sometimes require us to adapt traditional approaches to meet modern challenges. The ceremony was attended by Major General Whitmore, Captain Morrison, and other senior officers who had been involved in the review of Michael's actions. Their presence reflected the military establishment's endorsement of his decision to prioritize protection over protocol. Following the ceremony, Michael was promoted to Lance Corporal, with assignment to the Guard Training Company, where he would help develop and implement the new protocols that had emerged from the incident. His experience would be used to train future guards in threat recognition and appropriate response procedures. The new training program incorporated lessons learned from the firework incident, teaching guards how to balance ceremonial duties with security awareness. Michael's actions served as the primary case study, demonstrating how traditional military values could be applied to unexpected modern situations. The key lesson Michael explained to new recruits during training sessions is that our ultimate duty is to protect the royal family and their residences. Ceremonial protocol is important, but it must never prevent us from fulfilling our primary mission when faced with genuine threats. The impact of Michael's actions extended far beyond his individual career. The security improvements implemented after the incident had enhanced protection for all royal properties, and the integration of ceremonial guards into the broader security framework had strengthened overall defensive capabilities. Dr. Mitchell, the palace security advisor, used Michael's intervention as an example in international conferences on protective security, demonstrating how traditional ceremonial roles could be adapted to address contemporary threats without sacrificing their essential character. The teenagers involved in the firework attack faced ongoing consequences for their actions. Marcus Webb's custodial sentence had been a wake-up call that transformed his perspective on anti-establishment activities, and he eventually became an advocate for young people to avoid extremist influences. I thought it would be a harmless prank that would make us famous, Webb later wrote in a letter to Michael. I never understood that we could have seriously injured people or caused real damage. Your intervention probably saved us from facing much more serious charges if our plan had succeeded." The other teenagers completed their community service and rehabilitation programs, several going on to pursue careers in public service. Having learned valuable lessons about the consequences of their actions and the importance of contributing positively to society, Michael's story became part of the oral tradition of the Guards Division, passed down to new recruits as an example of how to uphold military values while adapting to changing circumstances. His actions demonstrated that tradition and innovation could coexist when guided by clear principles and sound judgment. 1 year after the incident, Michael was selected to participate in a documentary about royal security that highlighted the evolution of protective measures for the monarchy. His thoughtful analysis of the challenges facing modern ceremonial guards helped educate the public about the complex balance between maintaining traditions and ensuring effective security. People sometimes think of the royal guards as purely ceremonial figures, Michael explained in the documentary, but were highly trained soldiers with real protective responsibilities. The key is knowing when those responsibilities require us to act beyond traditional ceremonial roles. The documentary featured interviews with security experts, military historians, and palace officials who praised the new protocols that had emerged from Michael's intervention. The integration of ceremonial guards into modern security frameworks was cited as a model for other countries with similar traditional protective roles as Michael continued his military career. He remained proud of his decision to abandon his ceremonial post that November evening. The split-second choice to prioritize protection over protocol had not only prevented an attack, but it also helped modernize royal security, while preserving the essential dignity of ceremonial traditions. Standing once again at Buckingham Palace, now as a decorated veteran and training instructor, Michael reflected on how a single moment of decision had shaped both his career and the future of royal protection. The teenagers' firework had been intended to attack the palace, but instead it had strengthened the defenses and resolve of those sworn to protect it. The lessons learned from that guy, Fawkes Knight, continued to influence royal security protocols, ensuring that future guards would be better prepared to face similar challenges while maintaining the centuries-old traditions that defined their service to the crown. Michael's legacy was not just his individual act of courage, but the lasting improvements in security and training that his actions had inspired.